Good afternoon, you handsome lot, and today on the ramp we have got a 2015 Ford Fiesta 1 litre Ecoboost, which has required a Wetbelt replacement. Now this car has covered a whopping 145,000 miles and it's still on the original belt. So let's go ahead now and get this timing belt replaced. First thing we're going to do is disconnect the battery negative first, just up by here on the strut top tower with an 8mm. Shall we move round now, remove the catalytic converter, because personally I think that this is the longest part of the job, is getting that cat off. Now to get it off, it's going to be easier if we remove the air conditioning pump. To take the air conditioning pump off, we need to remove the alternator belt. It's just right faff. But first we're going to remove this intake, just so we can get these intercooler pipes off, these boost pipes, and we can make a start down there. Right, now I've gone ahead and pretty much removed all the intake pipes, and we've got a little bit of access down here. I've moved the head of the tank out of the way, and we're going to get all the gas out of the air conditioner, for the simple reason being, do you need to take the pump off? No. Can you do it with the pump on? Yes. Are we going to take the pump off to make it easier for ourselves? When you've got the machine, absolutely, every time. We're going to make as much room as possible. Now, as you can see, I've got the vehicle fully raised. We've removed the alternator belt and a little plastic cover that goes around the belt. Now, this vehicle, let me show you, it has got a catalyst system efficiency lower than threshold. The flexi snap, so this car is going to require catalytic converter as well. Now these bolts that I like to drill out, I've drilled them out, but the nuts on them are that heavily corroded, it's just spinning. So I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll have a little look and see what we can do. If you can see, there is nothing left on them, so I might have to just keep drilling, keep drilling, keep drilling. Well, this is how I've got this little broken piece off. Now these studs, I've had to keep drilling and drilling and drilling, and in the end what I did was get my air chisel and then just go and it snapped off. The state of that. Well, we have run into another problem. Now these bolts on these air conditioning pumps, they are prone for seizing and snapping, and this bottom one has seized. Now how I'm going to do it is pull this skirt down and then go in through there with, let me get it open, my pickler vibro hammer, and also the socket is set for it, and I'm going to go through there and I'll do a little video. Now I'm not going to lie, on this one here, it is being really stubborn. I've already tried to give it a go with the vibro gun. Put a tiny little bit of heat on it and see what happens. Turn it off now, and there we go, we've got it off. Whew, tell you what, some cars are easy, some cars they're going to put up a bit of a fight. Right, now let me show you something. I've got the alternator off, the air conditioning pump off, and that has given me a lot of access to the heat shield on the exhaust. Now you don't need to remove all them, you can take them off, but however, these bolts on the heat shield have all corroded as well, so what I've had to do, get my trusty little air chisel out and give it a bit of a brr brr and get that one undone. But look at this, I've got a nice pile of parts and I am nowhere near getting that timing belt off yet. Like these, let me flip it round, little things like these bolts seizing, snapping, corroding can add hours on a job. Now it's probably taken me about an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes to get to this stage. I could have probably got the timing belt off by now if Ford would have designed an exhaust where that pipe there unbolted so you could take it off to saves taking all that catalytic converter off. It's the longest part of the job. Right, now I've got all them heat shields off, we need to move around to the 4 bolts and the manifold. Now these are prone for snapping or pulling the threads, but what we do, give it the best chance as we can, give it a little bit of launch power do plus, and that's going to help them nuts come off. I've already started to back that one off and it's coming off easy. We're going to try the other 3 now. Fingers crossed they all come off nice and easy. Well, at least something's going to plan. We've got all them off. Right, let's get this catalytic converter back. Catalytic converter car back in the air. Get this catalytic converter off so we can get that sump off. Now with that cat out of the way, we can go ahead and get this sumperoonie off. Let's chuck it in a bit of a time lapse. Right, well I've now got the sump off and you've all seen what mileage is on this vehicle, and I know for a fact that this car has been serviced regular, very regular, because we've looked after it for quite some time now. And the moment of truth everybody has been waiting for, the oil pickup. It is like new. Can we get a little pry bar in it? Prise it out. We have got some in there, but I wouldn't say it's excessive for the mileage, considering the amount I've done, and I've seen a lot worse at like, well, 40,000-50,000 miles. Right, now with that sumperoonie now off, we need to go ahead and get the engine prepped for timing. Now, for those who do not know, we need to remove the starter motor, which is up there. Now there's one bolt which is a little bit of a pain to get to, but how I get to it is through the passenger side in the wheel latch, up there with a long extension, and you can get that top 13mm nut out. With that starter motor now out of the way, we'll go ahead and we'll get this crankshaft timed up. Now there is a bolt timing pin that goes through the back of the block here. You take a 10mm bung out and then the pin slides through. Make sure when you're putting it in, it is nice and tight. You get a 21mm on the crank pulley now, and you'll see the crank coming round and locking on that pin. You see it there? That now is timed. With that crankshaft now locked up, we can go ahead and get the crankshaft pulley timing pin and put it in through a little hole at the top there, and that should slide straight in to the timing cover perfectly. And then we can go ahead and get a paint pen and put 2 little marks on the flywheel and on the bell housing, and also one up here on the crankshaft pulley, one by there and one by there. So when we're aligning everything back up at a later date, it is going to be so much easier, and we can make sure that our crank hasn't moved. It shouldn't move because we do get a plate that goes on the flywheel, which is that one there. But I do like to just reference everything. After all that, we still need to get this rocker cover off to be able to time the camshafts. Now, the first thing I like to do, as always, is get myself my airline, and we're going to give everything a nice blowout, because as you can see there's a lot of debris everywhere, and I think that back bolt there is going to give us a little bit of jib as well. They are prone for corroding and they can be a bit of a nightmare to get out, so we're going to go ahead now. Okay. All of it, we need to get all that out. With everything blown out, I did have to get a 9mm on this back bolt here because it was heavily corroded, but we got it out. Now I'm going to get this rocker cover off and I'm going to put it into a little bit of a time lapse. As you can see, that rocker cover is now off, but even though we've timed the crankshaft up, I have removed the pins because the camshaft is 180 degrees out and we do need to get it timed up. Now the timing tool, everybody asks me what timing tool do I use, and it is a laser tool 6952. Brilliant kit. Now we need to get, let me put that down for a second, that inlet lobe on cylinder 3 coming up to about 2 o'clock, and how I'm going to do it is get on the 21mm on the crank. I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to try and see if we can get it first time to slot on. I'm saying about there. Look at that! Look at that! Look at it! Slotted on first time. How many of these have I done now? I hate to think. With them camshafts now locked up, the 2 bolts to secure it to the cylinder head, make sure that they are nice and tight. You don't want them finger tight. If they're not tight, the chances are it could possibly slip. Now with everything locked up, we need to go ahead and remove this timing cover, but to remove the timing cover, we need to remove the crank bolt. And to remove the crank bolt, we need to go underneath and set the torque multiplier up. As you can see, I've gone ahead now and I've already put the torque multiplier on, and I've slackened this crankshaft bolt off, and it does fit just on the back of the engine up there like that. And make sure that these bolts, when you're tightening them up, everything's got to be tight. Everything has to be, because you don't want anything slipping or failing. Right, we can get this off now, get that crank pulley off, and make a start on removing the timing cover. Now, one thing I do want to address is the amount of emails and messages I get is, oh hi Baz, I've done me wet belt on my car and the car won't start. My first question is, have you timed your crankshaft pulley up? And what do they say? No. Make sure it's timed up, and also do not damage it, because behind there is a magnetic pickup, and if it's not perfect, this car is ever going to start. As you can see, that vehicle is now back down at working height, and we've removed the engine mount, and a lot of people ask me how do I support the engine when the engine mount is off. With a jack on the gearbox mount. Now bearing in mind, you do have to take it off to put the torque multiplier on and then put it back on, so right faff. We can go ahead now. I've got all them bolts out of that timing cover, and we put them in a piece of cardboard so we know they're going to be going back in the right places, and we can get a pry bar between the cylinder head and the timing cover and just prise it off, and be careful with that plastic water pipe down the back there. Right, progress now has been made. I've removed the timing belt and the oil pump belt down the bottom there. You see the crank? I've cleaned everywhere up, and it is looking like brand new. Also cleaned the sump again, which is like brand new, and the timing belt cover. Now when you're doing a little bit of cleaning, there is a little filter that goes just behind the timing cover by there, and there's a little 6mm grub screw. Now I have cleaned it. I'm going to get that pushed back in and get that tightened up. So we go ahead now and put the new timing belt on. I put the new tensioner on, and that's 26 newton-meters. Now these timing belts, there's 2 different sizes of them, so be careful whether it's 16mm or 18mm. What I like to do is put them on the camshafts first and make sure that it's nice and taut, like that. Put it around the crankshaft pulley, and then it can go around the tensioner, because the crank pulley is free floating, and once that belt's off, you haven't got to worry about all this slack here, because as soon as you pull that tensioner, the crank pulley will turn and all the tension will be perfect, pretty much like that. Once I've now finished putting that timing belt on, we need to move around to the timing cover. Now on the timing cover, between the cover itself and the block, there is a rubber seal, which I do replace, and what I do before I pop it in is just manipulate it in my fingers with a little bit of red rubber grease. When doing this job, this next part, oh Christ, I almost slipped, is probably the most critical part really, is sealing the timing cover up. Now what I like to use is BGA silicone sealant compound. Now I like to put, oh can I see it, a V in the end of the spout, and it puts a nice beading of sealant all round. Leave that a couple of minutes now and then we can get it put on. Now the biggest problem where a lot of people go wrong, they put it on and then they slap it on. You have to leave probably 99% of sealants stand for anywhere between 2 to 3 minutes, depending on the weather and how warm it is, just to have a little bit of a skin on it, and then once the skin's gone on it, you can then apply it perfectly. There we have it. With a little bit of magic now, that timing cover is back on. Now, one thing that we do need to replace is the crankshaft oil seal. Now, in this laser timing toolkit, you do get a seal adapter, an insertion seal, so we can get it tapped in correctly. With that seal now in place, we can go ahead and put the friction washer back in. If you don't put this in, when you're tightening that crank pulley up, it will spin. So make sure you put that in, and it fits flushly with that timing belt pulley. The part where a lot of people don't get right. Now that crankshaft pulley, it has got a little hole at the top there where that pin slides through and slots into the timing cover. As it goes through, you can hear it like thud. Now we've got 25 newton meters, 70 newton meters, which I've already done, and then you put your torque multiplier on. You go 60 newton meters and then 5 stages of 90 degrees on the torque multiplier itself. After that crank bolt now is all torqued up to spec, you can get around. And if that pin comes in and out nice and easily, that is going to be perfect. Chuck it on one side. Now I've gone ahead, I've taken a little baffle plate off the bottom of the engine here, so we give everything a nice clean down. Both surfaces on there now and the sump are spotless, so I'm going to go ahead and get all this fitted, and I'm not going to bore you really assembling it all. It's 4 o'clock. I'm probably going to be finishing this off tomorrow morning anyway, but yeah, I'm going to plod ahead. Well, we are now into Friday morning. As you can see, this car is now all back together. Let me swing it around for you when it decides to play a game. I'm just about to put some fresh coolant in it. Now, if you haven't got one of these already, these vacuum and refill systems, especially after doing a big job like this, is an absolute game changer. Now, there's a link in my link tree for it. Once it's pulled the vacuum, now this has been on for about 5 minutes or so while I've been messing around and one thing and another. We're just going to flick a switch now, and that will fill that coolant system. And there we have it. That car now is fully back together to a point where we can get on the key and wind it over. But we're going to disconnect the coil packs because we don't want it started, because we want to let that oil pressure build up. Connected the earth, plenty of coolant, we've got fresh oil in it, and all we're going to do, jump in. Shut up, bloody bing bong. Wind it over. Now if everything goes to plan, and I've done everything right, plug these coil packs in. Like so. And we can get on the key now, hopefully. We should start up first flick. Look at that. It'll miss for a little bit once the fuel pressure's sorted itself out. There we go. No oil light and the car is ticking over like a little Singer sewing machine. Absolutely perfect. Now I'm going to let this car tick over, get up to temperature. I haven't got to worry about the sealant going off because it went off overnight. Now that car now is pretty much finished. So I'm going to take for a little bit of a test drive, make sure everything's okay. Once this is off, I've got another Focus Air which is coming on for a wet belt. So yeah, that is going to be my Friday. I hope we've all had a busy week, and that is one 145,000 mile Fiesta Ecoboost timing belt replacement. Anyway, let's get it sent. All have a mint weekend.